Welcome. I thought I would do a kind of better late than never VR to Katey Flowers if you could only have 10 decks. I agonized over this. It was really hard. I wanted to cheat a lot, but I've mostly got it narrowed down. So the first deck is Crowley's Tarot, which I've had since the 80s, as you can kind of tell from the poor little tuck box. This is the first deck I ever got. It's still in really good shape. It's the only deck I used for years and years. And initially, I used it for everything, everyone, and then at some point, it just didn't feel right to use for other people. So it's, oh, excuse my dog. It's funny, I bought a Rider-Waite-Smith deck just to, I thought, oh, I'll use this for other people, and I didn't like it. Like, I really didn't like it. And I ended up giving it to a friend of mine. But then, when, if we were going somewhere and he wanted me to read for him, or we knew that I would be reading for other people, I would have him bring it, and I would use that, or, I've had other people over the years either purchase decks or they had decks that I used to read for them. So this deck is just for me now. To me, this is a very cerebral deck. It's great when I'm feeling really conflicted, or if I feel like a reading wasn't very clear with another deck. This is the decider, like the authoritative answer, I guess. And it's going nowhere. So the next deck is the Obitos Tarot. And I adore this deck. I actually have the mini size too, which is really nice. Now the mini is newer and it's matte. This one does have a gloss, but I like it like that. Like, the cards just move so beautifully, so I really enjoy the gloss. They're not crazy glossy, but to me it's well, maybe they are a little, but no, they're just perfect to me. And I adore this deck, and for a long time I didn't want to use it for anyone else. I think because it just speaks so powerfully to me, and I just didn't want to share it. But I have since relented it in that way. I don't pull it out for everyone, but I do pull it out for some people. So it really just depends. But this is such a wonderful deck in so many ways. And I really, really adore it. So 100% has to be in the top 10. Oh, say, they just have a life of their own. Sometimes you just have to amuse yourself. But, yeah. I love this deck, and it's definitely in that top 10. So next, we have the Madhouse Tarot. Now this deck, when this came on Kickstarter, I was absolutely blown away. It is so beautiful. The artwork is exquisite. The quality, I have a lot of their decks. This is Tarot Mania, and they never fail to impress. You know, you really, and I don't know if you can see that detail on the backs. It's beautiful. My only hesitation was that I thought that this was a deck that maybe I wouldn't be called to use that often. You know, it is the Madhouse Tarot, and I thought, well, you know, maybe that's good for shadow work, but, you know, how often am I really going to use it? And I got to tell you, I use it a lot. And it's wonderful for shadow work, but I think it's also wonderful even as a daily reader. Now, this isn't one I use for other people. This is only for me. But there's so much attention to detail with this deck. There's so much to explore, and it absolutely just pulls me in. And I really, really love this deck. And honestly, even if I wasn't using it that frequently, which I am, but even if I wasn't, it would still absolutely be worth it and make that top 10, because it's so powerful, and it's so beautiful and haunting. This is a haunting kind of deck, but in a good way. It's like that beautiful melancholy, you know? Not that I feel melancholy after I do a reading with it or anything, but it just, I don't know how else to describe it. But I love it. So I could never let that deck go. The next one is a little bit of a cheat. It's mostly the same deck, different editions, and that's the Lonely Dreamer Tarot. Now this deck, when the first edition came out, I missed it on Kickstarter. Look at those backs. But I discovered it in time to order it from the Etsy shop, and it was one of the last ones that was left. And then I received it, and I was absolutely blown away. And this is a deck that, to me, just speaks to my soul. And as soon as I got it, I said, oh my God, I can't not have this deck in my life. So I went insane, and I think this is the first deck that I did that with, but I was like, I have to have another copy just in case anything happens, and especially because at that point it was really hard to get a hold of, and people were looking for it, they couldn't get it, and I went on a hunt, and I lucked out, and I found someone who just didn't vibe with it for whatever reason, and they were kind enough to sell it to me for a reasonable price. So I actually have 2 copies of this. Then the Kickstarter for the second edition came out, and there were some changes, and differences, and I had to have it. So this one I use in spring and summer, and the other one I use in fall and winter. I only got one copy of this though, so I'm not completely insane. But I really, really love this deck. And I could just completely lose myself in these images. And they just speak very powerfully to me. So this one's not going anywhere. And in fact, I absolutely backed her oracle. I'm really excited to get that. So then the next deck, this one is really new to me. This is the Ashara Tarot. Ashara, I don't know. But this deck, I mean, I really just got this deck. And it doesn't matter because this deck makes my soul sing. That's the best description I can come up with. The day I received it, I went online and ordered the larger version. I love this size, and this is probably the one that I will use the most. But the artwork is so incredible. I just want a bigger size, and that's why I have a backup. This is another deck that's really just for me. I mean, maybe eventually I would use it to read for others, but I don't know. But, oh man, I can't even tell you how much I love this deck. I mean, from the first moment, and it reads so beautifully, and I am just absolutely in love with it. That's all I can tell you. And it's never going anywhere. This deck always has to be in my life. And look, I can change with a slight breeze, you know? But there are some things that don't change. And I think that's one of them. So next we have the Spacious Tarot. Now this deck, when I first received it, I thought, oh, I'm not using this on anybody. I have relented on this too, and maybe that's just when I get a deck that I love. Maybe that's just my gut response. But I really love this deck. It pulls me in, and it pulls me in a very quiet sort of way. You know, very calm and quiet. It doesn't pull punches, but it's gentle, and it's a very grounding deck for me, and it's just cool and quiet. Love the way it feels. I love the way it sounds when I shuffle it. And I love the imagery. Love everything about it. So that beauty's not going anywhere either. So now we have some oracle decks. And first among them is my Roots and Wings, which I edged very badly. I used some kind of marker that like wiped off or bled or something, and then I had to go over it and made a huge mess, and I thought, oh man, I've ruined the cards. And they absolutely bled. And I gotta tell you, I really kind of love it like this. And I mean, it's kind of messy, but it just feels very earthy and nice and warm. So yeah, and I do actually have the larger version, but I never use it. I love that I can just hold these in my hands, and you know, this deck is, it's like that old friend who knows you perfectly, and you know them perfectly, and you know, the kind that you can just sit with for hours and not speak and not do anything, just kind of be there and enjoy each other's company. That's how this deck feels to me. And I absolutely adore it. And it's, yeah, easily one of my favorite decks. So, then we have the Home Oracle. This deck is one that I do use in readings with others. It's just a it's a beautiful deck. There's something about it that just kind of reaches out. This deck I really like using before a reading begins, like as a first step in a reading, to just kind of maybe set the tone, or I mean, it obviously depends on the reading and, you know, what's going on with it, but oftentimes I'll use this deck as a starting point. And it just, you know what it is, I think this deck is a comfort, I think, to people who, especially if they've never had a reading, or you know, they're newer, or even if they're just maybe nervous about what they're asking. I feel like it just is a comfort, and a nice way to start a reading. Then, so this deck is kind of two. I mean, it is two, but they're almost the same deck. And this is the Tattered Wings Oracle. So this one came out first. Totally went under my radar. This is a really powerful and evocative deck. The artwork is absolutely exquisite, and it just sucks me in, and I could just stare for hours. I discovered it when it showed up on Kickstarter with this version, which is in color, and there are some extra cards, but I really couldn't decide, because even with the same images, these have very, very different feels. And ultimately, I knew that I had to have both. So I do. And sometimes I use them together. Sometimes I just feel drawn to one. It just depends. But this is a great deck for self-work. It's not a deck that I use for anyone else. You know, it's just for me. And I just find it to be very powerful. And the next one is a bit of a cheat because it is 2 decks, but they're by the same person. And they're similar. So we have the Forest of Precious Twigs and then the Westar Oracle. So the kind of interesting thing is that normally I really don't care for decks that have like a paragraph or an explanation on the back. You know, generally I like just, you know, regular backs. It does have a keyword, and then it's got a little paragraph about the card or the subject matter. It doesn't matter with this deck. It's so powerful, it's so beautiful, and I absolutely love it. Sometimes I will refer to the back, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just, oh, look at that. I just get lost in that image. And sometimes I'll use just a single card. Sometimes I'll use like a full spread and kind of travel place to place within the cards. And it's given me some really, really powerful readings. And I can't be without that deck, or with this one, without this one. And again, it's got keyword and, or, oh, you know what? It's not a keyword. It's a system of kind of like where you are on the path with the card, or where the creator was. Because creating this deck was a journey. For them, and yeah, I don't use it that way, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'll read the back, sometimes I don't. More times than not I don't, honestly. Same way with books. I do my own thing. But it's really just pulls you in. And I think it's really good for getting clarity, just for yourself, for that, you know, what's going on, what's this really about type of thing. And I also think it's really good for exploring that old junk that maybe you've been carrying around for a long time, that needs to come out or be resolved and dissolved. I find that these decks are really, really good for that. I think that's it. I think we're at 10. I hope so. I tried really hard not to go over, and it was really hard. I, of course, reserve the right to change my mind at any moment, but yeah, I really don't think any of these decks would be going anywhere. Now, if we could expand it to the 15 decks you can't be without, then we could have maybe a bit of play, you know, with decks coming and going. But with these decks, I don't think they're going anywhere. So I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know what you think. Do any of these decks strike a chord for you? And until next time, be wonderful to yourself, because you deserve it.